and welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, the show where we dance like crazy stupid people. Just kidding. You can do that, but we're also going to talk about marketing today. And not just any old marketing, not those things where you like Google it and you get 2.9 million different ways that you can write a client profile, but the conversations that people are not having about marketing, which, as far as I'm concerned, makes them more impactful. So welcome to the conversation today. We are going so if you didn't get a chance to check out Marketing Innovation Part 1, I would recommend that you check out Marketing Innovation Part 1. Although we are going to talk about some add-on and also new things today, so you don't have to have heard Part 1 in order to listen to Part 2
No,
today.
you do have to, actually. You need to go
So
stop watching this right now and go watch that one and then come back
and watch the replay.
Please don't do that. That would be horrible.
No, just if you're here, stay in the conversation and talk to us.
Oh, the attendance just dropped. I don't know what happened. There's all these
So,
people here.
They
left.
What we learned about marketing: if you tell all your viewers to go away, they go away.
Yeah.
Fun fact about marketing that sometimes we don't talk about either, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk again about marketing innovation. And why are we talking again about marketing innovation? Well, if you have watched the show before, you will know that at the end of every single show, I mentioned that these are not one-stop shop conversations, that you can't just come once and listen for 60 minutes and then know all of the things, especially in terms of how you might implement those things. So we are bringing back Marketing Innovation Part 2 because we've gotten to the point in marketing where we're doing a lot of copycatting. Okay? We're copying our competitors' SEO. We are copying one strategy for an entire industry. And I mean, it's just a lot of copying. So maybe we could talk about innovation and very minimally stick it in a couple of little places. So we're not just a complete copycat, but we at least have something that is ours, that we are trying to accomplish. And who better to have an innovation conversation with than with my good friend, Freeman Beals. I know, and he does that every time. It's getting old.
Every time. Every podcast.
It's his thing, and it's always important to have a thing. So Freeman, before we get into the conversation, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, a little bit about myself. All right, let me get my notes out really quick. I'm kidding. So those of you who don't know,
surprised at how many people do that. I'm asking you about yourself. You know you. Remember?
Yeah. Here's a fun fact about me. I take notes, but then I don't do anything with them. So I don't know if there's a point in taking them, but there you go.
I think there's a whole bunch of people who will resonate with that.
Yeah. If you do, I'm your person. I get it.
Yeah.
But hey, it's fun to have notebooks full of notes that you're never going to read again. So a little bit about me. My name is Freeman Beals. I currently am working with a company called Unbounded Thinking. We're all about creating innovative organizations, empowering them with tools to do that, and kind of measuring innovation. But that's a whole other ballgame. I really enjoy innovation because of two things, right? Innovation is all about kind of what can we do that's kind of abnormal, right? But also what can we do that's still efficient. And I think that's a key thing for me. So taking complicated and turning it simple, increasing efficiencies is all kind of where innovation lies. And that's why I'm kind of passionate about it. So
yeah. And he's only kind of passionate about it, just so you guys heard that, kind of, just a little bit. Okay, so for those of you who have not seen one of these conversations before, while this might look like a conversation just between myself and Freeman, there's this whole amazing chat feature here that allows you, I think it's,
this way?
depending on how my camera shows for other people. Anyway, it should be on your sidebar somewhere. And this is an opportunity for you to get into the conversation as well. So if you have questions about innovation, or you've been trying to incorporate more innovation into your marketing, type it in. I was like, is that a calculator? What is happening? It's a keyboard. Phones used to be that big, folks. Gen Zs. Take note. Just kidding. Love you, Gen Zs. Anyway, the whole point is get into the conversation. So type your messages. We would love to hear your questions, your insights, your experiences, your perspectives. If you are joining us and you also happen to be an innovation geek, then tell us. If you got tips, share them in the chat. We want all of the chat. The more voices we get into the conversation, the more empowering the conversation becomes for everybody. So Freeman, I know we started
right there. Collaboration, multiple different thoughts coming together.
Diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
It might come up later in the show. But before we get too far, Freeman, and I know we did this last time too, because I think it's just best practice when we're talking about kind of hype words like innovation. Let's define innovation for the sake of our conversation today. So, what is innovation?
Okay, so we have an internal definition of innovation, and I think I mentioned this last time, but I highly encourage everyone to come up with their own internal definition of innovation. For us, it's the right response to change. So that's really what innovation should mean. I want to be very clear as well for people that innovation and invention are not the same thing. Innovation is an improvement upon something. An invention is the creation of something new and novel. So just be aware of that when we're talking about innovation, not invention.
So, Freeman, you're in a lot of conversations about innovation. Would you say that in general, people default to invention
I
in
think
terms of their expectation of what innovation needs to look like?
exactly. I think people think innovation needs to be this big, new, shiny thing, and that's more like invention. It's quite rare that something happens, right? The light bulb was an invention. It was a new thing, right? The LED was a innovation upon the light bulb, right?
Right.
Things like the light bulb only happen so often.
Right.
However, invention is happening all the time, or sorry, innovation, not invention, is happening all the time, all around us. So strive for innovation. Don't strive to be inventive because it's very, very rare and challenging.
And would you say that if we strive for like a culture of innovation, that our likelihood of inventing something new is also higher? Or maybe
Yes,
not?
it is certainly. You're going to be looking in the frame of like what can I do to change what's happening. But really, it all comes down to that word improvement, right? And if you're always looking on ways to improve what you're doing, I think this is going to lead into something else. So let me kind of get there. But if you're constantly looking to ways to improve what you're doing, you will often not look at something that's novel, right? Because it ultimately is going to fly in the face of improvement because you cannot improve on something that doesn't exist. So there would be that thing. I think if you want to look at sort of more invention, I guess you'd probably want to look more at like problems to solve. That would help you become more inventive versus innovative.
Mm,
But I think either way, solving problems is a great thing,
mm.
which kind of segues into how that deals with marketing, right? Like you can be innovative in marketing and you can, improve upon things that you're doing, right? I think being inventive in marketing is far more challenging.
Mm. And it's interesting. I was having a conversation with a fellow marketer earlier today about the speed at which marketing changes. So it does seem like, I mean, especially with social media platforms, right? There's always a new one, right? Every 2 years, there's a new social media platform somewhere else that we can turn into advertising revenue. So people are inventing. There's definitely people inventing, and I think it's actually pretty common in marketing in that sense. But then I also think that there's a lot of chasing, right? There's because people we've got chat GPT, right? And they're like, this has been invented, although technically it was, I think, probably innovating a whole bunch of things together. But like now we have that. It's a new thing, right? So now we all have to use it. And we like chase. It's like we chase this one way of doing a thing. We chase one way to use a CRM system. We chase one way to do email automation. We chase one way to make posting on social media. And all of a sudden, instead of leading and searching for improvements, we are just chasing. And so, Freeman, I'm sure you see that in some of the organizations that you guys work with from an innovation perspective. So, any tips on how to like flip the script from chasing to leading?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to get caught in the chasing bubble, right? Especially like with social media, and this goes to marketing or even our lives, right? It's so easy to get lost in the rabbit hole of what's that person doing, what's this person doing, what is that company, and then you get into chasing, right? Like, oh, I
Mhm.
have to, I have to catch up to this, them, that, whatever. I think and this is we deal with this with organizations all the time who feel lost or who they feel like they're chasing, but it's really coming back into like what are your values? What is important to you? And when it really comes to marketing, it's like what are important to your consumers and your clients, right? So instead of thinking about your competition, right, think about the people you're trying to serve, right? And to add a little flair to this, of course, if that's you, if you're trying to improve yourself, right? Who are you trying to serve? Well, it's yourself, and what do you want? And think about it that way, right? But understanding your values, understanding your customers or your clients' values, I think that's really where you have to back it up to. So remove the new fancy shiny, the new toy, the new thing, right? The new social media app, and just really look at like values. Because if you can begin to understand what your core values are as an organization, now you can choose, is that new social media app the right place for us to go? Does it align with our values, and does it align with our customer values as well? Because if it doesn't, then there's no point to go there. It's wasted resources, right?
Mhm. And I
So I
think that
think
this
that's
happens so often in marketing. And like even with small businesses, I was talking to someone the other day and they were like, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, and like now I have to do TikTok. And it's like, do we? Like, I mean, it's an option. Yes, it's an option, but do you have to? And I think this is, again, the thing when we think about marketing from a visibility or awareness perspective, I get questions all the time like, well, what platform are my customers on? There are 2 billion people on Facebook.
all of them.
There are customers for you there. There are almost 1 billion on LinkedIn. There are people for you there. I don't even know how many on Instagram because I'm not super active on Instagram. Probably lots more than LinkedIn, I would guess. And we're getting near there on TikTok as well. And so the thing is that you can find your people in any of those places. In fact, most people always say, like, I have a Facebook account and I have a LinkedIn account and I have an Instagram account. I do not have TikTok. But like there are people that you can find them on any of those channels. Those people also sign up for email lists. Sometimes those people probably listen to podcasts sometimes, right? Like there's these people are participating in a variety of places in a potential marketing funnel. And it's less about where are they than like, let's show up there and show people we're here so we can be like, come on, people who are like us, come on over here and we'll have a conversation, which I think is something like it's not complicated um, in terms of a like idea, right? But
Yeah.
there's so many people who are not doing that. And instead, just like, okay, the internet says I have to be on TikTok. So now I have to figure out a way to do that. And I have to find resources to do that, or I have to pay somebody to do that. And at the end of the day, I feel like one of the greatest skills in marketing, the greatest skills in life in general, is to actually ask, do I need that? Because if we're looking at innovation as the right response to change, and I want to dive into that in a bit because the word right is something that is interesting to me that I think we want to play with. But then we're looking at, okay, like something has changed here, right? Maybe the market has changed, or who we have at the company has changed, or our product has evolved, or something has changed. And this talking about a response to that. But what the internet knows might be how other people responded to that. But that might not necessarily be the way I want to respond to that or the way my company wants to respond to that. So, what role does that play in this concept of right, like the right response to change? Because I also think a lot of people think there's like one right way to respond to change.
Yeah. So this gets more into like talking about things like change management and stuff like that, right? Like understanding how, your organization or you are going to respond to the changes that are happening, right? Again, understanding your core values allows you to look at that change that's occurring and go, does it follow through with what I want to be doing as an organization? That being said, when things, especially in marketing, it's really quite important that I know we've been talking a lot about like not, maybe don't go to TikTok or, what is threads, right? Like, I dabble on it once in a while, but like, what are these things and is it important to my organization? So, the best way to figure if something is or is not a change is or is not important to you is like you still have to do a little bit of testing on something, right? So maybe there is a new social media app. So go dabble on there for a couple days and see what it looks like, right? Really, you need to be looking at like, where am I still garnering attention, right? So it's perfectly fine to go and try TikTok, throw a couple of videos up there and see what happens, right? Maybe they go they go huge and they go bigger. One of them does, right? One of the 10 that you do, right? You're like, okay, wait, there is attention on TikTok, right? And where is my leverage going to go? So it's like, okay, cool. Like maybe I should pivot some of my resources off of where it is right now and maybe towards, TikTok or another stream of marketing because I notice there's more leverage in that area. And I think that's maybe something that people don't look at enough, right? Is like, is this change something I can leverage, right? And if it's not, then maybe it's not worth the resources to pivot to it and stay where you are with what you're doing. So I don't know if that sort of helps people, but like understanding, first understanding the change and then understanding how it applies to your business, right? And is there some point of leverage that you can take so that you're not just trading one for one, right? You want to be trading one for two or preferably 10.
Yeah. Which is a completely different marketing conversation that we're not here to have today in terms of knowing what you want and delivering on it.
Yeah.
Different conversation. Okay, so if we're looking at, because I do think, I think this is an interesting thing about marketing as well, is that I think marketers have a ability. I don't know, like people have different levels of the ability, but they have an ability to test, right? We have all of these. It's very common for people to test subject lines or to test imagery on a digital ad, or like there's this like fairly small box of things which people are very good at testing, right? And we will I think most companies continually test subject lines, right? We'll just like A/B test these two subject lines, see which does better, and then switch it to that. And then the next time we do an email campaign, we'll A/B test the two subject lines, and we eventually learn and grow and make better original guesses. But like we still, I think it's very common to test in that kind of arena. I think it's less common to test like a new platform, right? If you're testing it maybe from the like exploration phase, maybe, but I think a lot of times we're sitting back and waiting for someone to tell us how to use the platform or tell us how to use ChatGPT, right? So ChatGPT is new, TikTok is new, right? Like we're waiting for like industry knowledge for how to use the thing instead of necessarily going out and being like, how would I use this?
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is what it does. This is who we are. How would we use this? Or would we not use it? Right? Which is also totally fine. But it's almost like we're saying we're testing these things. So we're testing, right? Like we're innovating email subject lines. So we're innovative.
So this is, yeah, it's funny because A/B testing, I don't want to say it's not important. That level of market test is very important, right? That data is super crucial, and I don't want anybody to stop doing A/B testing, right? So there's two important concepts that I kind of want to dive into here. So the first one is that innovation can live in different buckets and should live in different buckets, right? And I probably mentioned this on our last chat, but you have core, adjacent, and transformative levels of innovation. Depending on where your kind of values and goals align as an organization will depend on how much you put into each of those three buckets. A/B testing is stuff like core innovation, right? A/B testing your email line, that's core, right? You're just looking at ways to improve the efficiencies of what you're currently doing. And I think where marketing loses its drive is in the small bit of like transformative levels of marketing. So it doesn't mean just go to TikTok and try something new, right? It means like try a whole new format, right? Release something that feels totally off brand, right? And don't pivot your whole brand strategy. That would be wild. But just every once in a while, do something that seems completely outrageous. Take the idea to like up here, right? Don't stop at A/B testing subject lines of emails, right? Like launch a different email, right? Go like even go beyond that, right? Like we can explore what would look like an extreme way of sending an email, right? Maybe it's a handwritten letter to somebody, right? That's a weird version of an email, right? So like, I think that extreme level of experimentation should happen. It shouldn't take away all your resources, but just toss a few resources into like this extreme level, because two things will happen, right? Either A, you will have this great success from it, and maybe you continue with this, or you'll learn from that and go, okay, cool. This part of that was very valuable to us. So we're gonna use, I'm totally making shit up, but we're gonna use yellow in our branding more often now because our audience, really enjoyed the yellow in that crazy ad we ran. So there's a benefit to that. There's also this innovative way of thinking that I think society is sort of like squished a little bit, because you touched on it a little bit there, but when like things like ChatGPT or like a new platform comes out, we wait for this industry knowledge to become accessible. And most people's first reaction is to go on Google or YouTube and type in how to insert new whatever, um, you know, and then nothing like comes up of that, or you have to wait for it to come through. And again, now you're banking on other people's knowledge and other people's ways of using something.
Mhm.
So I think engaging that innovative mindset and going, how would, like you said, how would I use this? What would we do to make this thing work? And then try that,
Mhm.
right? And it's this whole concept that like we're afraid of failing or doing something wrong, and we're taught in society to like, yeah, learn and then do. And it's like, no, learn while doing, right? Like
Mhm.
that's how to be innovative, is learn while doing. So I would just challenge people to do that with their marketing, right? With something
Mhm.
new, right? Don't
Hey,
look for a tutorial, just try it.
yeah, and I mean, if you're trying to figure out how to edit a video, like, sure, go find a tutorial, right? But these are things, and I always come back to the brand, right? And I get, to some degree, I get it that people want to make sure they're not risking their brand image when they try something that might be out of the box. But I've also seen that really hinder growth from a marketing perspective, because people are so locked down on what their brand is right now, and they won't let anything that's even remotely, like, I would even say like a 2% difference, things that other people wouldn't even notice, right? That's actually more orange than yellow. Right? Is it red? Maybe. Okay. But like those tiny things, and they get locked down so hard because we have brand standards and brand guidelines. We don't do this and we don't do that, because this is how we protect our brand. It's always been really interesting to me, because while I do believe in having a well-defined brand experience, I also believe that that evolves. And if you look at any of the huge organizations that exist today, Disney, Coca-Cola, Apple, Virgin, right? Like these companies, one, none of them look the same. They don't have the same kind of branding. They don't have the same kind of marketing strategies. It's not like they waited for an industry knowledge and then built their brand on someone else's model. They built their own model. But then, secondly, they are just like, it's evolved over time. Logos have evolved over time. Taglines have evolved over time. The type of athletes that Nike gets as sponsor evolve over time, right? Like all of these things evolve over time because the company evolves over time. And if we try too hard to lock down the brand and we're like, we're going to innovate up to this point, but then we're going to lock it down. I mean, like, that's not the way humans exist in the world. It's not the way society works. It's not the way the economy works. So it doesn't make sense to do that from a marketing perspective. Yet so often people do that because they're looking for that one right answer, and they think someone else has it for them, instead of creating that opportunity internally to be like, we are going to find this. And
Yeah.
we can learn things from other people. Learning from other people is great. Okay. And we decide like, we're a TikTok brand. Okay. We are a LinkedIn brand. We are a analog only brand, right? Like, I only want the people who live on my street to know that I exist. Do you, man? If
Yeah.
it works for your sales funnel, all good. But like, I
I mean,
think,
if you're a window washing company, then maybe that's all you need,
yeah,
right? Like all you need is the people in your neighborhood to know you exist, and you've got a
especially
perfectly
if you
healthy
don't want
client
to
base.
drive outside of your neighborhood and you just
Yeah,
want to walk around and watch people's windows.
perfect, right? Like you don't need to run Google ads,
No.
right? Like why? Right? Because some YouTube guru told you to run a Google ad? Like
Right.
no,
And this
just
is why I often say to people, like, this is why people still get postcards in their mailbox, because sometimes it makes sense to put a postcard in someone's mailbox.
yeah, 100%. Completely does. I mean, we can cut down on flyers, okay? Like Staples, Canadian
Most,
Tire, when if you're listening, like stop sending me
yeah,
flyers,
I
okay?
got
I
a
don't need them
Canadian
anymore.
Tire one today that went directly into my
Yeah,
recycle bin. If I
exactly.
want to look for something, I will look at it on your website.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But now,
But that's actually a great example.
If Canadian Tire, right, you know, if the manager at your local Canadian Tire, right, wrote you a card that said, "Hey Tracy, you know, I'm the manager at the local Canadian Tire here, right? Nice little card, pretty straightforward, right? Just want to let you know that we are here for anything kind of household blah, 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 blah needs that you might need. Hope you have a great day. And they put that in your mailbox. I guarantee you would think about going to Canadian Tire to go get something more than if you had got that crappy flyer thing
And it would
in the
cost
mail
less
for the
and it
100th
would
time.
kill less trees.
It would. Yeah, it really would, right?
It's
And so I
actually
think,
interesting because I've been thinking about this quite a bit as well, because I feel like brands always want to grow, right? We want more revenue, we want to get bigger, we want to employ more people, we want to have greater reach, we want to make bigger impact, whatever it is. And interesting that organizations like this, they're just like so tied into the traditional way, like we've always done flyers, right? So we have to do flyers. But I was talking, so my husband works for a grocery retailer, and I was like, it's interesting because I've always wondered, I worked for like big retailers as well. What's the value of the TV ads and the flyers once people know you exist, right? So if you're building brand awareness, you have a new store in the area or something of that nature. Okay, like I get that, right? Like that's how people see that you exist. But once they know that you're there and they're probably going to shop with you anyway, and we're looking for the like teeny tiny thing to cut in the supply chain so that we can save a buck, right? Like, why don't we look at all of this marketing that it did its job? It did. It's just now no longer doing a job, right? So this is kind of the what I feel like areas of change in marketing, and we expect that this thing is just going to be necessary. No, we have to do TV ads because everybody does TV ads. Okay, well now most people fast forward through their TV ads.
I
So
don't even
how
have
many
TV
people
ads.
are
I don't. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
What are the
If you
TV?
stream and you have the high version, you don't even get ads. And so, although I think it's been interesting to see a lot of these like streaming services now having ads because they realize that there's value in having ad revenue. And it's like, business models. It's interesting to watch. But I think at some point we're going to get to the point where like, I just want TV back. Can I just have TV back? It was free and I had to watch ads. Okay? I don't want
I
to
think
pay for 100 different streaming services. Just make it free and I'll watch the ads. Okay. Okay.
I made this prediction a while ago, and I'll make it live here as well. So now it's been recorded somewhere. But I think we'll almost go full circle eventually, right? The streaming services, you're already seeing them now. You can bundle them all together, right? So I very much see, and this is coming from my user experience brain. So it's like, oh, now we're going to bundle all your services together. Well, wouldn't it be convenient if you could just open a guide and you could see what's playing on all your streaming services, right? Oh, well, now you're back to satellite TV
It's
again.
TV.
Like
Yeah.
it's TV. Like so I it's not far off of us just coming full circle.
Yeah.
And now
This
with
is
like
the thing. I
affordable,
just want to
yeah.
know what service Jumanji is on. Is that this difficult? I like anyway.
So.
Yeah, as a side note, but I think this is part of the I don't want to say that it's necessarily just like part of the marketing industry and it's just the way it's always going to be in marketing, but it's just, I think maybe just a business habit too, right? Like people are like, we're doing this and this is working until we get to a specific point in our brand growth or brand expression that we're like, oh, okay, well, that did its job. It did its job to do that, except now we're in phase 3 and we need a marketing program that matches phase 3 instead of matches phase 2, because otherwise we're not going to get to phase 3. We're only going to stay in phase 2 forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is another issue that people lock themselves into, is like, what is the phase, right? So oftentimes we look at like, okay, we're going to review our marketing budget next quarter. And it's like, that's like, you miss out on a lot by having these kind of stage gates that are predetermined and set, right? Like your stage gates need to be flexible, right? And need to exist not just on a timeline based on an annual timeline, but maybe it's growth, right? Maybe it's traction, maybe it's budget, whatever the thing is, right? Like your stage gate should be flexible. They should not have predetermined locations where they stand no matter what. Because, and this is like an interesting thing in marketing, and I've followed like a lot of kind of marketing schools, right? But if you want to make, ultimately your goal is marketing is to make like a big impact, right? Like you want to stand out, right? And ultimately, it's very hard to stand out when you're doing the same thing as everybody else, right? But once you do stand out and you start standing out, and then begin into the whole copycat thing, and people start doing the same thing as you, and now you're not standing out anymore, so you have to do something new to stay. Like, this is the cycle of marketing, right? And I've kind of watched this happen, and many people who follow marketing closely will obviously know who Gary Vaynerchuk is. And it was interesting when Instagram was going through all these changes in the last kind of 2 years. You know, many of you will remember when it was like, oh, it was all pictures, right? And then it became like all reels for a while, and then like stories got pushed for a little bit, and now it's like these weird like reel picture combinations, right? And I was watching Gary's stuff fairly consistently through this all, and just watching how he would like challenge the normals of what, you know, was going on Instagram. Same thing, and this goes back to what I was saying. He was putting the core things out, right? He would put out reels and stories and the normal thing, but then he'd also do these weird reels where it was like he'd have like a picture and then another picture that were like matching if you put them together, and then after that was like a video that was related to those pictures, right? Or like, and I saw him playing with these combinations of what Instagram would let him do, and then I saw other creators start to do this as well. And if you were just simply going to go, okay, next month we're going to look at, you know, changing our Instagram, you know, whatever, and it's like you have to be paying attention to what's happening, right? And innovating on what you're doing. Keep doing the core bits, right? We'll use Instagram for an example for now. Keep releasing stories and keep running your reels, right? But every once in a while, you know, play with like, I don't know, like an audio recorded over top of a black and white picture. See if that lands, right? So like these, again, it goes back to this, you know, way of thinking about things where it's like, what can we test that is vastly different from what's going on, right? And how can we do it easily, right? And so thankfully, social media is an easy place where it doesn't cost you any money to like. I'm not saying spend $1,000 on a ad campaign with completely new branded ads, right? That would be wild, right? But launch a couple, you know, posts, do a couple things that are kind of feel a little bit different for your thing. It makes me think of like, again, many people who are familiar with marketing are gonna know kind of the whole Wendy's story, right? With the Wendy's, you know, social. I don't know how that came about, but suddenly now Wendy's has this brand for known for being this like kind of cheeky, witty, you know, we'll throw punches kind of story thing, right? Like that wouldn't fit into Wendy's kind of branding. I don't know if they ever sat down and had a brainstorming session about how we're going to run our social media. I would bet that it was an offshot thing that went viral and then they ran with it. If you have stage gates in certain places, you can't capitalize to bring this full circle. If you have stage gates on certain things, you can't capitalize on those testing experiments.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I think a lot of times we think we'll run these tests and we'll learn the thing, but that was like a closed box, right? We collect the data, we close the box, we put that experiment on the shelf and just collect dust with the other experiments. Okay, so there were kind of two things that were coming up for me when you were sharing that is that I feel like it's easier to try those kinds of things. So like I wouldn't have done that because I'm not that interested in Instagram. I have never gotten into it. So like for me to think about testing something new on Instagram because they're going through all these changes is actually a very heavy mental load for me. Is that true for everybody? Is that true for Gary? Probably not, because he spent his time and resources doing that. However, if you asked me if I would try something new on LinkedIn, I would do that in a second because I was like, yep, that feels easy for me because that feels like the place where I do things, where I have people, where I build relationships. And so I think there's an interesting thing to take into consideration. Again, coming back to the brand itself is like, what feels fun for us? Like, is there somebody? I remember working for an organization and one of the marketing coordinators just really wanted to create a podcast. He was like, there's nobody in our industry who has any kind of thought ownership in the podcast arena. So we should have one, right? And I was like, go to town, man. You want to start a podcast? Start a podcast or like record some episodes. We'll post them in some free places, see how it goes. And if you have fun doing it, we can do the whole shebang. And he did a few, and then he was just kind of like, oh, it's like a lot of work to like get people to interview. And he thought he'd be able to get clients, but then a lot of the clients wanted to like keep their privacy. So like they wouldn't volunteer. And so it ended up being a lot more complicated than he thought. And so it's not that podcasting in general is a bad idea, but it was mostly that podcasting didn't fit that brand, right? The person doing it and the people who he had thought would participate in the conversation didn't want to participate in the conversation. And so it didn't make sense. Lots of brands build their entire business off of a podcast and have a lot of fun doing those tests. And they test it and they love it. And then you can go with it. And I think that I love what you're saying about those gates, right? Is like, and I always think marketing, we do a lot of testing without a real hypothesis, right? We're saying like, we'll A/B test this subject line and just create 2 subject lines. Like, what's our hypothesis though? Do we hypothesize that one of them is going to perform better? And why do we think it's going to perform better? Like, we don't actually have a hypothesis. We just have 2 guesses and then we see which guess works the best. But if we have this idea, okay, like, no one's having these conversations. We could be the people having these conversations. That's a hypothesis, right? So we can test the hypothesis. And in that scenario, we proved it wrong, right? Like, this is not going to be a good match for us. That's fine. And we can put our resources elsewhere. But there's like a specific hypothesis that you're testing, which is kind of, I feel is kind of similar to the concept of the like response to change, right? Like, I think this can help. And not because the internet said this can help, but because I think this can help. So we try it. And because I think this can help, there's also that other level of ownership of saying, like, this is my idea, right? And not to the point, because I also think there's a lot of ego floating around that tries to force us into like, this was my idea, so now I have to prove that it's a good idea. Like, well, let's try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Let's move on to the next one.
If you want to be innovative in any realm that you're in, whether it be marketing or business or anything like that, like, I hate to be blunt, but you have to check your ego at the door. It's impossible to learn from your mistakes if you're ego about it. It's impossible to, look at a failure in a positive light, right? If your ego is in the way, and it's impossible to iterate and improve on something if you cannot take constructive criticism on what it should look like. Right. So, key point of good innovators are they have the ability to disassociate the outcome from their like internal beliefs on the outcome.
Right.
Which is not easy, right? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't fall into, having these ego biases kind of put forward as well. But yeah, I think it's,
well, we all have an ego.
Challenge.
We all have an ego. Can't get rid of it. Right? It's part of you. But I think the interesting thing is that we do have that separation, like you said, that disassociation where like, this is my idea. And quite honestly, if it doesn't work, that's fine. It's my idea. That didn't work. And I'm fine with that. But that doesn't mean that I failed. That doesn't mean that I quit. That means that idea didn't work. And let's talk about it. Let's explore what idea might work. What did we learn from that idea that we didn't know before, that now we can create a better idea next time because we have more knowledge. And again, while we like look at things, okay, I was like, do I want to bring this up? Because I know we're like getting close to the end, but I feel like it's a deep part of the conversation. Is that, so if we're doing these like A/B testing types of things, and we're convinced that we're an innovative organization, what are some maybe symptoms or signs that we might be able to see that might be telling us that maybe we have made a bad assumption about how innovative we actually are?
Yeah.
I see this specifically with like technology companies because often they have very innovative products, right? Or services. And they kind of like keep the innovation in that area, right? They're like, we're innovative because we have innovative product. But we don't welcome innovation in marketing. We have like an identical business structure to our competitors, right? Like all of these things are actually, again, in the copying, but we have that narrative that we're innovative. So we miss out on the opportunity to actually be innovative in those other places.
This is such a great question. So much of like whether you're being innovative isn't about whether you're making new products, whether you're making new services, stuff like that. It's what do the people who work for you believe? And what do you enable them to do? Because ultimately, you can be innovative and you can release new pieces of tech and new systems and softwares. But like, if people aren't using those pieces of software or if the people inside your organization aren't thinking in innovative ways, then you're not actually an innovative company, right? You maybe have some innovative higher ups and they're maybe calling the shots the right way, right? But you're not enabling innovation throughout your organization. So we have many kind of questions that go into figuring out if a company is innovative or not, but asking simple questions like, do the people working here understand what innovation means to our organization? Not what does it mean, but what does it mean to us? What does it mean to be innovative, right? Do we have a structure to capture ideas from the person working at the front desk at our office to the CEO at the top, right? Do both of these people have the same way to put an idea forward into something? And is there a way for us to weigh that idea and then experiment on it, right? So ultimately looking at your organization is, do we have a way to innovate? And really looking at that question, right? Because if your way of innovating is, well, yeah, we have these 4 people over here and they're our innovation team. I'm sorry, but you don't have an innovative organization. You have an innovative team inside your organization. And that's cool. But you're not an innovative organization. Right? You're an organization that sometimes releases innovative concepts. So I think having that understanding and going, what is our system to innovate and does it involve our entire organization? The answer to that question will ultimately dictate, are you an innovative organization?
So if you want to have an innovative organization, so trying to figure out how to ask this. I feel like there are people who are naturally curious and innovative and question the status quo and see problems and these types of things. And I feel like there are people who kind of love to coast. Okay, like I would like to just ride the train. And maybe that is incorrect, but
yeah, I would argue that it's really, I think there are people who are outspoken about being innovative, and there are people who have been muffled to the point they don't bother anymore. So I think that that's really the problem that comes in. And this is the same, like, this problem isn't just like, I want to make sure that we're still in a little bit of the marketing realm as well, right? Because this is part of the issue that happens across organizations, but it can also happen in the marketing department where it's like, every time somebody in your marketing department comes up with a new idea, it gets pushed down and never delivered. Eventually that person's going to coast because you're taught them that it doesn't matter what they think or what they say or their ideas, because you're not going to perform on them anyways.
Right.
So this is really where, like, it comes down to the people of the organization being innovative. Right. And because we're all innovative. It's in our biology to be innovative. It's part of why we have survived as far as we have as humans, because we look for solutions and we identify problems and we are curious, right? And these are what creates creativity. But when you stifle that as an organization, you lose those ideas, right? You lose that input from those people. So that's, I would say, if you're trying to figure out how do we be innovative, especially in our marketing department, right? It's like, how do we ensure that people feel, heard, that they have ways to, present ideas, that we can at least show them the bare bones of, like, oh, your idea did come in, and it was weighed against these metrics, right? And unfortunately, because of that, we're not, we haven't moved forward with the idea. But so it's little things like that that I think kind of add up to creating, these innovative ideas. But we're all innovative. It's whether or not we've been given the ability to kind of present that innovation.
Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it too, it probably is tied into that again. Are you responsible for ideas in an area that you care about? Right? Like, if I was supposed to innovate in how to make an airplane engine more efficient, I would have no idea how to do that, right? Because I don't know anything about that system, and I don't know anything. I don't have an interest in that area. But when someone asks me, like, what could be different in this marketing system? There's like a million different ideas, and like, let's try one and see if it has an impact, and then we'll go to the next one if it doesn't. But I think there's a lot of alignment issues in, like, careers right now, which I'm hoping in the next, like, 20 years gets sorted out. So by the time my son has to have a job, he will going into something that is actually aligned with who he is as a person. But I I agree with you. I've seen that happen so many times where like people have just been, I think the most frustrating thing that I watch is that people are being asked, but people are also being stifled, right?
Yeah.
So I'm making you give me your thoughts and then I'm doing nothing with them. So it's not even just like you can give me your thoughts, maybe if you feel brave enough, and then I'm stifling them, but like I'm asking you for it and then I'm not doing anything with it. And even in like, so one of the things that I always find really interesting, and I've experienced, I remember doing this project when I was in school. And we had like 20 minutes. We had like a specific topic, and we had the Dodge Caliber. So when the Dodge Caliber was new, we were like, how would you market the Dodge Caliber to university students? And for like 20 minutes, we just all like, it was silence, and we just like post-it note, brainstorm, like write everything, every idea you have in a post-it note, stick it on. And there were like, I don't even know, probably thousands of post-it notes on this board by the time we were done. Because I think there were like 100 of us participating in the exercise. And then we like went through and we like organized them into like sets of ideas, right? Because people had similar ideas, but one person framed it a like slightly different way. And so like, oh, there's an idea there. And I always found like since doing that, I've always found that there's, even if it's an idea that you don't act on 100%, there's an opportunity to say like, oh, okay, this is a cool idea. We're doing this right now. Is there a hybrid? Is there a test that we could do? So we're not just like completely flipping over, but we're saying like, could these two things actually be the same thing? Right. And I feel
Mhm.
like that's kind of a level of innovative thinking as well. It's just like, could it be, or how can it? How could we make both of these things work together at the same time? Can it makes me think of Apollo 13, where they're like, we need to get this round thing into this square thing, and this is what we have. We need to make it work, right? And they make it work because they're like they have a specific problem and they've got a specific tools. Like, how can we do this? And again, in my experience, even if we have like, I mean, this is people again. I think people are behind the scenes in marketing, right? So at the end of the day, this is a people thing. And I've had people. I'm like, this is we keep doing this project. Every time we do this project, it loses us money. So one of two things has to happen. We have to stop doing this project, or we need to figure out how to do this project in 4 hours or less.
Mhm.
And I gave the challenge to my team, and they figured out a way to do it in 4 hours or less. They automated some things, and they like, and I was like, that specific problem, specific challenge, and then we get to innovate. We get to come up with a way to do that. And it was possible that it wasn't possible to come up with a way to do that, but in my experience, it's almost always been possible to come up with a way.
Yeah. And it's super important, right? We have a framework to do this. We have our problem solving framework, right? Which is a way to kind of get to things. And it's like, so this goes back to like what I said about it's important to understand like what innovation means to you, right? Because if you don't have that definition and you bring a group together and say, hey guys, we're going to brainstorm something, like now all these ideas coming, like you have to give people at least somewhat of kind of guardrails to look
Mhm.
at, right? Because then it's easy to go, hey, like, sorry, Jane, we're not going to go forward with your idea because it doesn't quite follow, it doesn't fit into, what we determine as being our definition of innovation and what our kind of value of innovation is, right? And most likely then that idea, like they might not even think that idea either because they're like, oh yeah, we're innovating on this, right? So to come back to this and with what you were talking about, like we have this framework called ideate, clarify, and explore. So you have like before you begin, sorry, clarify, ideate, explore. Got them mixed up. Before you like start putting 1,000 sticky notes on a wall, right? Like, what is the thing that you're ultimately trying to figure out? What is the core
Right.
of the problem? Because
Mhm.
often we immediately go into like thought world and we're like, okay, cool, explore out. But it's like, bring it back a step, right? And like really understand, okay, like what is this marketing campaign? What is our goal of the marketing campaign? Right? What are we actually trying to achieve? Let's really clarify. Let's write it down into 2 sentences. This marketing campaign is to do blah blah blah. Okay. Now when we go to ideate, we have a very clear understanding what we're ideating on, right? We can be much more efficient in our ideating, and then we can go and explore what that might look like,
Mhm.
right? How would we test this? How would we do this, right? It's a much more efficient way of kind of working through a problem or coming up with a solution to something, than just immediately going, okay, guys, here's a problem, come up with some solutions. All right, we're gonna like, you have to have a formal process,
Right.
because
Well, and I
otherwise
also
it's
think that
inefficient.
kind of like openness also plays into the let's look on the internet and see what the internet says.
Of course.
Right? How do I create a productive email marketing campaign? I go to
Yeah.
the internet and I search precisely that. And then I actually did a similar search to that the other day, 21 million results on Google. They're like,
Yeah.
you can't even, it's not even useful information at that point because there's too much data, right? So, like, what do we know? And what do we, like, we're all consumers, we've experienced things, right? What do we think? We like Instagram, we like TikTok, right? Like, how would you do it in that space? And this was the thing I always thought too was really interesting. I remember like hiring for marketing roles, and I used to like consistently get resumes that look exactly like mine. And I was like, I don't want someone exactly like me. I want someone as different from me as possible because I already thought my thoughts. I don't need someone else to like high five me and be like, yeah, good thought. I think the same thing. No, I need somebody to think something different so we can figure out the answer because otherwise it's just like one set of thoughts. And again, I think this happens a lot in marketing where we just say, like, okay, we've got the marketing strategist or the VP of marketing at the top. They create the strategy, right? And then all of us here, we just implement the strategy. And even though we see on a day to day basis that this part of the strategy is stupid or like waste money or isn't creating any value, our job is just to execute it. Our job is not to ask questions. Our job is not to give feedback. Our job is not to ideate or iterate. Our job is to do. And I think this is a downside of the progression that marketing has made is that we've created this level of people who are just responsible for execution. Even if they try to ideate, we're like, no, that's above your pay grade. That's above your
Mm.
pay grade. And then I mean, to whose benefit? As far as I'm concerned, it's a huge detriment to an organization to have the frontline people who are experiencing the things on a day-to-day basis locked in a silo where I, as a leader, don't get that information. That's crazy. I want to get that information. I want all of the information, right?
Mm.
I need to have a good ability to be able to like sort through things and manage communication and relationships to make sure that like yeah, not everybody's idea is going to be the thing that we do every time. But at some point I I have some ideas, but I have one perspective.
Hmm.
And it's like maybe I've had more exposure than
Yeah.
some other people. But this is why I also love like multi generations, specifically in a marketing department, specifically if you're targeting multi generational customers, because like, I want to know if I say, I read a thing once about how like thumbs up emojis were interpreted like completely differently by Gen Zs than they were millennials. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh, this is relevant information. But if nobody tells me that, then I just walk around my millennial self giving everybody thumbs up and high fives because that's what I do. But like, if we don't have that, and we aren't experiencing that as the people in our marketing team, then you think the people who are consuming our marketing are experiencing that? No, yeah, it's just like the lack of people connection, and it goes all the way through the
Yeah.
marketing funnel.
Yeah, exactly right. And then we think that we can solve this issue by having this like, oh, like, but it's okay because I'm the VP of marketing and I make sure that my marketing managers below me provide reports to me. And then the interesting thing that happens when that's the form of communication that we rely on, right? This
Mhm.
sheerly like one directional kind of upwards form of communication, is that, and anybody who's middle management understands this, right? You will subconsciously or consciously maybe only really put forward things that you think the person above you wants to see, right? Like, and this is part of the fairly dry yet interesting book called The Innovator's Dilemma that kind of goes into this a little bit more. But it's like the problem is if middle managers are trying their best to perform for the managers above them by giving them what they deem as the best solution to the thing, right? Then you're filtering all your ideas kind of as they go up, and you're not really getting the ideas from the people in the front line in their raw kind of form, because you've like filtered them, right? So this idea that might be really breakthrough and great is like put through because, manager one goes, no, I don't think that's not really it, right? I don't need to bore Tracy with that idea because it doesn't make any sense. So it gets filtered out right away, right? So you have to have this way of not filtering through the frontline ideas, right? Because unfortunately they'll get pushed out, and then you'll live in this little bubble of like the ideas that the top people think are the good ideas.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I do think like that is unilateral, and then I think in marketing it's also very common for like people just to give like marketing coordinators things to do, right? Like, I need a video for this, I need to update this sales slide deck, I need this and I need this, and then pretty soon those people are just like so busy with things that they don't even have time to think about things anyway. And so it's the opposite direction, then it's top down, but it's not top down in like a meaningful way. It's just top down and like, I need to get stuff done, get it done, and don't even bother asking me why we need to do it, because you have 5 minutes to get it done. And like neither of those work, right? And both of them are very common, specifically in the marketing infrastructure, because we want to, as a middle manager, it's our job to make our managers' life easier, right? So I'm going to filter out stuff. So because they can't have all the stuff, they can have a small amount of stuff. But I think the interesting thing here is that, like, again, I go to how can we, right? Like, if that is true, and we want to have an innovative organization, we want to have an innovative marketing team, how can we? How can we make sure that this is functioning down here, knowing that we are only going to share the final thing with the vice president or with the CEO, but we all experience, like our experience as a team is that we are doing this together, that we are in conversation, that we have that opportunity to clarify, ideate, and experiment, right? Like, and that is like, I think they can live in the same place, but they have to live it intentionally in the same place. It has to come back to that again, like, this is something we want to create, so this is how we're going to create it. And while we might now have kind of finished in the area of like marketing team versus like marketing externally, I'm a huge believer in that how the marketing team works internally is how people experience the brand externally. And so if we have this way of innovating internally, we can talk, we can clarify, we can ideate, we can create definitions for ourselves, and we can do all of those things, then that is also, it's not like we record the session and then put it on our YouTube channel, but like the people experience that in our beingness when we create marketing, or when we write a social media post or a blog post, or we create a video, or we record a podcast, or we do any of those things, because we live it as employees, and therefore we can use that as input for our external marketing. And then that's what, I mean, everybody out there nowadays being like, we're innovators. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, your brand is what people think you are, right? Not what you say you are, what people think you are. If people experience you asking questions, being innovative, finding new ways of doing things, they'll believe that. But a marketing tagline it's not magic. It's just about how can we align this to who we are as best as possible. And then people are like, oh yeah, you're totally that. I get this for my LinkedIn tagline all the time, because it talks about creating togetherness based on uniqueness. And people are like, oh my gosh, I like feel that about you. And I'm like, yeah, because it's like literally something that I believe to my core, right? And I take into consideration when I do anything, when I parent, when I coach, when I go on LinkedIn Live, this is part of who I am. And people who are like that can then identify with that and be like, that's the type of marketer I want to help my business. Yeah, see how short that sales funnel is? Very small. All about the shortest sales funnel. Okay, so we did it again. We came up right to the edge of the hour because you knew we were going to. And we didn't even have any questions from the audience. We just had all of our own questions. So for those of you who were listening who perhaps did not get a chance to ask a question or share your perspective, please feel free to do that. This will be available on replay on LinkedIn and YouTube, so it'll still be valuable for people to see those comments if you're watching after. Freeman and I would love to see them. So if you're watching this and you're like, oh yeah, I have a similar scenario to that, and I'd really like to talk it out from an innovation perspective, contact me, connect with Freeman. If you're not already connected with one of us, connect with us and tell us that you saw us on the show, and we'll have more perspective on
Hit the buttons.
Yeah, do the buttons, like and subscribe. No, I don't like. Yeah, I mean you can.
That did not come out authentically, Tracy.
No, because it's not.
That was not you.
You see how I do that like marketing voice when it's like not really me. Yeah, I've never actually authentically said that once because I want you to like and subscribe. You know what I want you to do? I want you to connect with me and have a conversation. That's what I want you to do. So if you want to hear, if you want to talk some more about this, let's have a conversation about it. But not until
let's be honest. People already know to like and subscribe. We don't have to. Let's go through everybody. Like, stop telling people to. They know. Like, people.
If they
society
like
understands
it,
that if we like something,
if
to like it or subscribe.
They will.
Stop telling people it.
Anyways, Freeman, thank you so much, my friend. Where is the best place for people to find you if they would like
all my stuff lives all over LinkedIn, so please connect with me there. It's super straightforward. Freeman Beals. You'll find me all over LinkedIn. So, and like Tracy said, please reach out if you have a question on anything that was chatted about today or innovation, or you're stuck with something. I'm always happy to help.
And if you happen to be in the Calgary area, please stay tuned because Tracy and Freeman are going to be collaborating on some kind of marketing innovation workshop. We haven't quite figured out what it looks like yet. But if you're interested in that, contact us and we'll make sure you're on the info list.
Definitely.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time, permission to do you.